Awesome. So we are here on, we usually say on the phone, but we're not on the phone. We're on a Zoom call, a video with Chuck Taylor and Greg Watson with the USAC Midwest Thunder Midget Series. And thanks for joining us here on the show for the first show, technically in 2021. And we're excited to have you on and talk about what you guys have coming up this year. But let's talk a little bit about the history of the series. It's a fairly young series, as I understand it. Is Midwest Thunder, was it born in 2016 or was it kind of transformed? Can you tell us a little bit about the history of that?
Yeah, I can jump in there. It was kind of transformed, right? So we came out of the old USAC Focus series that had been around since the early 2000s. And that was running into some challenges by 2013-14 from a car count perspective. And USAC was looking at doing some different things in 15 with their sponsorship arrangement with Honda. So they came out with a different Honda motor that they tried to implement, and the car counts really just weren't there. So that opportunity that Chuck and I kind of stumbled into, I guess, in terms of having some friendships with some folks that worked at USAC, and we kind of consulted them on, well, what would you do, if it was, your series, and Chuck and I gave them some ideas, and they moved forward with some of that and asked us to help. And the next thing we knew, it was kind of in our lap, and USAC was kind of out of the picture from the standpoint of the day-to-day operations. We really picked that up in 2016 and ran with that. And of course, we're affiliated with USAC. We appreciate the support that we get from Kevin Miller, and especially from Levi Jones. He's been great to work with, and it just kind of grew from there. Is that fair, Chuck? What did I leave out?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we kind of stole the name a little bit from the quarter midgets. So I was involved in transforming the quarter midgets from to USAC several years back, and then we kind of picked up with that name with that Midwest Thunder. So we kind of stuck there. So hopefully kind of almost a transition from maybe quarter midgets into kind of midgets. So kind of a next step thing. So we modeled it a little bit after their program, and the club organization is modeled after the quarter midget club by a little bit, as far as, Greg and I kind of manage the club and with USAC support.
The other piece that has to do with the name, though, that I would throw in there is, I guess maybe I'm the old guy on the call, but a big thing to me was that Thunder series that USAC did back in the 80s and the 90s. And, it really captured that grassroots midget racing to me across the Midwest and out in California. Just a really exciting time. And, I think when I think about what we're trying to accomplish, it certainly is an opportunity for some of the young guns to come in out of quarter midgets and give them a place to really start their open wheel careers in full-size cars. But it's also a club atmosphere for a lot of guys who are content to be doing what they're doing, or maybe have gone off and done some other things and have come back because this fits their budget and their family lifestyle better. So I like to think of it as kind of a combination of both the best of two worlds. It's the developmental series getting folks exposure, giving them a chance to move on to other things if they desire. And it's, just a great place to go racing with a lot of great people if you are just happy to do that.
Do I remember that?
Thunder... So you guys have raced a little bit in Ohio.
Go ahead.
We're stepping over each other. We always do this.
Yeah.
So you guys have raced a little bit in Ohio. I know I've seen you guys at Waynesfield. So for those of the listeners and watchers, I guess now that don't know, what is like the Speed 2 midget?
You want to take that, Chuck?
Yes, as far as what the midget looks like, or as far as the series, is that what you're referring to?
like what the
So-
midget is, maybe some specifications,
Okay.
for the people who may
Okay.
not know.
Okay, so the midget, as far as actual midget, look, it's the same midget as all the midgets. So the frame and most part driveline, everything else same. The only thing that makes ours a little bit different is actually engine package. So our engine package is a stock engine. So like from the automotive industry, so taking a stock engine out of a car and then putting it in a midget, and then trying to keep out the performance stuff, keep the costs down mainly. So that's kind of what they are.
So you guys have probably heard some of the national midget motor numbers thrown around if you listen to the Chili Bowl telecast last week, right? So, a lot of those motors, the Toyotas and the Stanton SR11s, that's a $40,000, $50,000
Right.
motor. And, I think they put on a fantastic show. Love the Chili Bowl. Really disappointed that I couldn't go this year. And there's just nothing else like those cars. But for the average grassroots guy or the younger guy whose family is footing the bill to get him or her out there to get that racing experience, I don't know. Maybe you can do that once, but what do you do when you blow that one up? You go buy another $50,000 motor. So, what Chuck and I found appealing in the old Focus series was that the short block itself is really inexpensive, right? So, you bolt all of the stuff on the injectors and the ignition and the header and the oil pan and that sort of thing. But once you have it, if you blow it up, you literally, in our case, can go and get a new Ecotec motor or a Ford Focus motor or a Honda Civic motor somewhere around $500 to $1,000 at a junkyard. Chuck and I have both taken motors like that, put them in our cars and gone out and been competitive. Maybe guys don't want to hear junkyard motors. That's fine. Go through a basic rebuild with bearings and rings and gaskets and that sort of thing, and make sure you know what you get, that it's all in good order, but you still have less than $2,000 wrapped up in that motor. So, a very economic alternative. And the other piece to use in the national midget chassis and components is that there's a great market of used stuff. Chili Bowl is full of it. You walk through the pits, everybody's got stuff for sale, wheels and shocks and driveline components and everything you can imagine. So I know personally, my sons and I have really tended to focus on used stuff as opposed to going out and buying all new. And I would say most of the competitors in our group have used chassis, at least, in order to save some money in terms of getting in. Most of those rollers, $6,500 to $8,500 for a good roller coming from one of the national teams. And then you put that motor package together, you have a very reasonable, I'm not going to say cheap, because no racing's cheap, but at least it's reasonably affordable, right? And, for me, the biggest part is there was always that stress of, well, what if my son goes out and blows up the motor, and some of the other things we did. And it's like, what are we going to do then? We're probably done. And in this case, it's like, I can go get another one. I'm not losing sleep over that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that the series kind of fell in your lap, but it sounds like both of you are. I could obviously, Chuck, you're in a shop, so you own cars, and Greg, it sounds like you owned as well, or had sons that have driven or kids that have driven. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys got into this from the beginning? Were you fans first, or was it something that your kids wanted to do? How did it start?
I'll start off with mine. So I was racing with another friend and spending a lot of time on the road, and then got kindly encouraged from my wife to probably spend a little more time at home. And just about the right time, we kind of fell into the quarter midget thing. So I have two twin boys, and we raced quarter midgets for 5-6 years. and outgrew that. And really our last race, I was sitting in a guy's trailer, and we're kind of like, well, what are we going to do next year? And he actually had a midget and said, why don't you come to my shop after this race, pick it up and take it to the next race and see what you think of it. I'm like, well, okay, I'll try that, but I don't see being able to do that. So we went to the shop, picked it up, went and raced the next race. And then one thing turned into another. And by a donation from my dad, we ended up buying the car. So that's kind of how we ended up with it. And then slowly progressed. My son since then has gone into the military and left me, the one that wanted to race. And then who we raced with in quarter midgets came along and started racing. That's where Aaron started racing for me at that point in time. So I currently have 2 cars, and Aaron runs one. And this next year and last year and this up and coming year, Jacob Denny will kind of run the other one. So that's how I ended up with it. I guess to back even up further, sorry to back up some, but my first introduction to racing was actually working at Limaland Motor Speedway. I was one of the infield race directors. So that was my first experience into the racing industry.
I started out as a fan. My dad was a big fan. In fact, he was from Southern Ohio, and a friend of his in that area was involved in midget racing at Torch Speedway back in like the late 40s, early 50s, before he went into the Korean War. When he came back, started a family, kind of lost touch with racing until I was probably late grade school, about to go into junior high, and he had the time and the budget at that time to take the family to the races. And one of the places that we spent a lot of time at was Columbus Motor Speedway here in Columbus. But eventually, branched out to other tracks around Ohio. I grew up as a result of that, always saying, well, someday I'm going to be a race car driver. And it just seemed like, one thing or the other. High school sports, went off to college, came back, still telling my story, and thought, either you're going to have to do this or shut up about it. So I started racing karts, which was great at the time. I got to do Mid-Ohio and Commercial Point street race and 35 Raceway on the dirt, just a whole bunch of different places, a lot of fun. And I saw, about that same time, I saw one of those Slick 50 sprint car races out on the West Coast on the Nashville network, which was kind of like the racing network at that time. And they had these weird little cars called dwarf cars, which nobody could even pronounce, right? That were replicas of the 1930s, 1940s coupes and sedans. Looked a lot like what Legends cars do now. Mm-hmm. So I kind of took a flyer there, got a loan, bought a couple of cars from the original company that developed those out in Phoenix, and started showing them around racetracks here in the Ohio area, 92, 93. And that grew into an organization called the Ohio Valley Dwarf Car Association. We probably peaked about 1999. We had over 75 guys participate with us in that year, and full schedule, 25 plus races, a merch program with hats and t-shirts, sponsors for the points fund. It was a lot of fun. But that kind of morphed into, based on some transition among tracks and relationships that we've had, we kind of landed on a home track deal at Shady Bowl Speedway. So I kind of got out of running the club, and it became more of not a regular class at Shady Bowl, but something that was there pretty frequently. So I continued to drive up until the early 2000s. And at that time, similar to Chuck, my oldest son had seen the quarter midgets and was all excited, wanted to do that. So we started that when he was 5, and we kind of did that off and on, all the other team sports and stuff. So we just tried to find time when we could as a family. Had a lot of fun at the Hog Barn indoor quarter midget racing in the winter. That's just a fantastic experience for the kids. And that kind of evolved into a little bit of karts with the kids, a TQ, a mini sprint, and eventually that mini sprint led us to Mount Pillier Motor Speedway in Indiana when they opened their midget series, the Mount Pillier Midget Series in 2012. And honestly, we kind of thought it would be a one-time thing. We'd take our mini sprint up there, run non-wing, probably get blown away and never come back. But my son Alex actually did really well and was really had a lot of fun. So we kind of stuck with the Montpelier series, and that's where we got exposed to some folks that were involved in the USAC Ford Focus, because on the off weekends when the Focus series wasn't running, they'd bring those cars to Montpelier. And my son had a chance to drive one. Similar to Chuck's story, we ended up renting that car for a season and had some success with that in 2015, the final year of the Focus series. And at that point, went out and bought our own, and then that kind of was, all right, now we got this car, and the series kind of went away, and we can always race at Montpelier, but what else can we do, to encourage other people who have these cars to go out and get involved in and continue racing them.
Now you're in it all. Now you're all in, right?
Yeah,
So
you go from one rental car to a whole shop. As you can see, Chuck's background there, mine's kind of the same. So I don't know how all that happens. I wouldn't let that happen.
So you mentioned TNN, or the National Network, twice. I remember and you mentioned the Thunder series, and they called it was a Thursday Night Thunder, or was it Sunday Night Thunder?
Yeah.
I can't remember. And that is the first time I ever saw a wing sprint car growing up in South Georgia. And I saw it on TNN, and it changed my life forever. I've said this. I said this before. I had to find a wife from Ohio so that I could move to Ohio and be closer to sprint cars. And I achieved all of it. So
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I think that show took a lot of us down some roads that we're still following today, right?
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
That's great.
I was saying, Chuck, you mentioned Jacob Denny there. He's one of your drivers, and he made some waves this past week at the Chili Bowl. So kind of talk about some of your drivers that you have in the series, and who might be some of those guys that might make some waves here in the future.
Jacob Denny is definitely one that is going to. I believe really Aaron Leffels, our other championship driver for prior to Jacob, the past 3 years. He's done really well. I've seen him do things in cars sometimes. I've been around him for a while, so I've seen other things. I remember one race, it kind of was like, man, you could do this, you could pass, and you could really, win that race. And after the race, I was kind of asking him, like, why did you do that? He goes, well, that puts me in, this position in the next race if I finish here. So that he really had the forethought as far as thinking out where's going to put him in the next race, where he's going to be, just because the invert and things like that. So that's definitely one that's coming. Our rookie of the year last year, Abby Holbein did very well. It's kind of her first year with us, and very consistent. Kept her nose kind of clean, just ran really well, and was just the consistency was there. So I think that's someone who's really you want to kind of keep your eye on as far as future wise. Outside of that, I hate to say no one, but I mean there's a lot of them. I'm just trying to think that right now off the top of my head, I don't think anyone really stands out. Greg, what do you think? Is there anyone catches your?
I'll jump in there. In fact, you guys mentioned Abby. We were listening to your last podcast. She ran at the shootout, represented Ohio at the shootout, had some rough luck there. Unfortunately, I'm sure she would have wished for things to turn out a little bit better. But yeah, the fact that, as a 14-year-old with quarter midget experience and micro midget experience, jumping into the full-size midgets this past year and running with a bunch of guys that have, at this point, we got a lot of guys that are 24 to 28 years old, and a bunch of them started in quarter midgets. So, you're talking about guys with 20 years of experience in a race car at 25 years age. So that's kind of crazy. So, when I think about those guys, there is a whole bunch like that. Certainly Stratton Briggs comes to mind. He's the son of Thomas Briggs. Thomas was a long-time grassroots midget sprint car racer from Anna, Ohio. Actually won the Rumble. I don't remember which year that was in a midget, but Stratton has just a phenomenal record looking back over the last 3-4 years. He's been in the top 3 every year, I think, for the last 4, if I remember that right. And, it's really impressive. He's built up a team with his dad and with his brother, Zane. And they typically bring 3 or 4 cars to the races, one for Stratton, one for Zane, and then a couple of rental cars. Thomas is always hustling at the track, as you could imagine, with all that. But really, really great job there. Another guy that I think you'll be hearing more about, Gunnar Lucius, has really shown a lot of strong runs. He just hasn't quite been able to pull it all together for a feature win yet. But he's one of the guys. We were talking about the automotive power plants, but our series also allows the motorcycle-based midgets.
Mm-hmm.
So in those cars, heard of them referred to as lightning sprints or 1,000cc mini sprints. So Gunnar came out of those, ran at Waynesfield Speedway before joining our series. And, I think you'll continue to see him doing a lot of good stuff. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the guy at the other end of the spectrum, Uncle Chet. I don't know if everybody calls him that, but at least some of the guys do, right? So if you follow midget racing at all, the name Chet Gerke is somebody that seems like he's been around forever. In reality, I think it probably goes back about 15 years or so. He was a USAC Focus champion, I think in 2007, maybe or so. But, pops up everywhere. Originally from Oklahoma, now lives in, I guess that'd be northwestern Kentucky. But, willing to travel, shows up in Georgia, shows up in Illinois, Oklahoma, all over driving midgets. And, it is just one of those guys that you can never count out. We had 2 races last summer, back to back. Chet was our hard charger, and in both races, I think he passed something like 13, 14, 15 cars. Started in the back of the pack, worked his way up. So, that's cool. And then the last one I'd mention, just because he does a phenomenal job on social media, but Bryce Dews is a fairly new, I guess this is maybe his 3rd year, but he's doing a great job out there promoting our sport. He served our country as a Marine. We're very, proud of his service there. So, you kind of have that aspect of his background. And you also had that moment at Gas City. I guess it was the season before last, where he proposed to his wife to be out on the track. It surprised her there. That was pretty cool. It was supposed to be honor Bryce for his service moment, and he turned it around into a full-blown wedding proposal out on the front stretch of Gas City, and got a lot of great, notice for that. So we're leaving out so many guys. Last year, we had 53 guys run with us. I say guys, but guys and girls. Ran with us at one point. We do have a core group, I'm going to say probably of about 25, 28 that run with us on a regular basis. So just a lot of really good people, great families that we really enjoy spending time with at the track.
So, but the 25 regulars that have run in with the series, last year obviously was a weird year. We don't need to bring that back up. But you still got 17 shows in last year. And it looks like going into 21, you might have 20 plus shows on the schedule already. One of the reasons, obviously, why I reached out to you guys is that you had some events here in Ohio last year, but you've got even more coming up in 2021, a couple of trips to Atomic, Moeller. Can you talk a little bit about, what you've added to the schedule and where we can catch the series once we get racing here?
Yeah, last year was kind of unusual. It was really unusual, right? But from a scheduling of races standpoint, we had a great schedule put together for some good representation at Ohio racetracks. And then the coronavirus restrictions kicked in, and I think Ohio was more difficult for the track promoters to work with, because it was kind of a county by county thing. So you had kind of crazy situations where Brad there at Atomic was able to basically run his full schedule with some minor restrictions. And then you had poor Shane at Waynesfield trying to bring that back and grow that. And, he's not able to do any fans at all
Right.
summer. Just economically made that, impossible for him to do. We were so excited to be going back to Lima Land Speedway. We raced there in 2016. We were going to go back with a special race to honor USAC midget champion Mike Stryker, who had passed away about a year before. And of course, Lima Land, affiliated with the school, UNOH, had maybe a little more difficult time than most because of how can you open up a racetrack and bring a bunch of people if you can't open up your school right next door. So those things fell off the schedule. We scrambled. We felt really fortunate to be able to bring back and run 17 times, starting at I guess late June, early July through October. But I felt like we had a really successful season. We had a lot of support from our drivers, from the track promoters. We really solidified some relationships there. So yeah, this year we're excited to go to the new Moeller Raceway Park under new leadership there. So we'll be there on their open wheel night with the Boss Sprint cars. So that'll be great. Going back to Atomic twice. The first one is on a kids night, which we love to be able to expose the kids to the midgets and give them a chance to sit in the cars and get excited about that. And then later in the season, we'll go back to Southwest Ohio Swing, a 2-night deal where we'll be at Jackson Speedway on Friday night, and then at Atomic on Saturday, to really make it worthwhile for those guys that are driving over from Indiana to get to race twice for their gas money. We'll be, fingers crossed, Lima's able to open and do everything that they have planned. And so we have plans to do the Mike Stryker Memorial Race again there at Lima Land in May. And I'm still talking with Waynesfield, fingers still crossed. They've put out a few dates where they're going to have the Boss and Fast sprint cars combination working with Aaron with his series. And at this point, they're still deciding on support classes. So we love going there. It's kind of like the center point of all of our membership. There's a whole bunch of guys within an hour's circle around Waynesfield, and we always have a great car count. You mentioned you'd seen us there before. I think 2 years in a row we had over 30 cars show up at Waynesfield, put on a great race. So that's our Ohio side. We also have Indiana tracks that we have good relationships. Probably the one that's best for us there is Gas City. Jerry Gappin, since he's taken over that facility, has done great work bringing it back. We just love Gas City, the non-wing racing that they support there. So we'll be there 5 different times, I think it is, next year. We kind of followed Levi's lead. If you follow the National Midget Series, he's built in some new bullring deals. So they did the Leffler over at Wayne County Speedway in Illinois on I think that's a 5th or maybe a 6th mile, and that went great. So he expanded that into some of the Pennsylvania tracks the last couple of years. So we kind of did the same thing and connected with the folks at US 24 Speedway, and had a phenomenal race. We didn't mention Adam Taylor. He's another one of our top runners out of the western part of Indiana, but he and Gunnar Lucius had a heat race where I swear they traded the lead every lap, at least once, maybe twice. Slide jobs back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I mean, I almost was on the ground. You're just like, no, this is crazy. So we really felt like we made our statement at US 24 that, which is typically known as a micro track, that we could go there and put on a great race. And that got the guy down the road at Circus City excited to have us there. So we're doing some things with them at that track, which is also typically known as a micro track. And then probably the last one there in Indiana that we're super excited about is the new Circle City, which is kind of confusing with Circus City, but a new facility at the Marion County Fairgrounds in Indianapolis that just has a phenomenal schedule coming up for 2021. A little bit of everything. They're bringing back the Thursday Night Thunder Series there.
Right.
With the non-wing sprint cars on I think 5 or 6 nights, and there will be some regional USAC midget action on those nights. We're going to be there twice, one with the ASCS 360 sprint cars that have a joint race with the NRA guys from Lima. We'll be a support class that night, and then we'll also be supporting the USAC national race later in the season at Circle City. So just great work there by Jonathan Bird, who obviously with his involvement in Rich Vogler's career and in the Indy race, and ultimately, putting Brian Clausen in a car at Indy and really supporting grassroots racing. We're just excited to have Jonathan and his team doing what they're doing at Circle City.
I
say
mean,
you
go ahead.
All right. I was gonna say you mentioned some of those tracks that I had written down on my notes. So I'll go ahead and ask a question anyway. Then, you're racing with the Boss Series a couple of times. You're racing with the ASCS and NRA guys, and you're racing with the USAC Sprint guys. So how important is it that you guys get to race with them, to kind of expose them to you and expose your guys to them?
I'll let you jump in, Chuck.
I think it's the bigger thing is exposing they bring a little bit different crowd. So being able to expose us to that crowd is a great opportunity. And somewhat the drivers, most of the drivers we have somewhat of a relationship with, they know about us that we talked with, but the crowd is kind of probably the biggest thing that we really like to get in front of, a little bit larger crowd and show them. And our racing our cars are so closely matched together that we have really tight racing. So, the leaders are usually right on top of each other. And so there's some very exciting racing amongst our series. And I think we can gain some fans just by them being able to see us and know how close and competitive racing is.
I'll let Clint go if he unmutes himself.
So I was going to say earlier, one of the things I'm really excited about is to catch you guys at Lima Land. Since I've been in Ohio, I've been trying to add 2 new tracks a year last year that I hadn't been to yet. So last year, I'm ashamed to say that I had not been to Fremont and Atomic. I added both of those last year. So next year, I'm hoping to add Lima Land to the list, and interested to see, to see the midgets there. So as far as completely just drew a blank.
You pulled a me. You blanked out.
And he's on camera doing it this week. So
I know.
There you go.
I know. Can't delete that. To talk to myself in a circle. So as far as the progression goes, we talked about it earlier, but we have guys that were in quarter midgets and then moved into the midgets. Are there other drivers that you could think of that have gone on from the midget series that recently into maybe a wing car or the USAC sprints, or have you named all those already?
I think with our series being fairly young as far as that, without going into some of the other, before us, we're pretty limited. I know the kid who drives for me, his goal has always been to drive a sprint car. So there's his sprint car. He's back to powder coating a couple days ago. So he ran it a little bit last year and is planning on doing it again this year. So pretty much whenever there's an event where it's the midgets and sprint cars, he'll take a sprint car and he'll run the sprint car. And then we'll run usually one midget in the sprint car. So that's kind of his goal. His goal is really to kind of progress as far as, in that realm. So it's a 410 non-wing. And we've run down Lawrenceburg a couple times, Kokomo, Gas City several times. So about 4 or 5 races last year, and then I think he plans on increasing it this year. Other people have gone through, moved on.
Well, Gage comes to mind, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Gage. Yeah. Gage Edkins ran with us a full season in 16, 17, and then now is 410. Last year did a full year of 410s. I believe it may step back a little bit, but I don't know exactly where he's at now. But he's definitely one that's moved on from there.
Yeah, his truck is not so subtly featuring his championship banners in the background. You can see Aaron in 2017, 18, and 19, which was really phenomenal. But Gage was our champion in 2016. Came out of many sprints at Waynesfield and followed our series and did a great job representing our series as our champion at the USAC Banquet of Champions there at the PRI show. And I kind of echo Chuck's. I think, there are certainly some folks that are interested. And I think maybe this is just me, but, again, being the old guy, it used to be people got involved in midgets and then would move into, the sprint cars and then the big cars, right? If you go way back to the 40s and 50s. So there was that progression. And a couple of things. It was cost, it was complexity, it was ease of being able to store and transport a midget versus the bigger cars. And so I think that's a part of what we're trying to do here too. We've got some folks like Jacob Denny who, have had those opportunities with the national midgets, and that's phenomenal. And if he gets the opportunity to do that on a full-time basis somewhere down the road, well deserved. But I think the reality with a lot of our drivers being here in Ohio and the cost associated with the National Midget Series, which again, is awesome, but you're showing up at a track and you're competing against, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 Keith Coons cars, and you've got, the Clausen Marshall cars, and you got the Chad Boat deal. So, it's pretty easy to sit there at the pit gate and go, okay, now we're running for 12. Now we're running for 14, unless you're prepared to be at that level, which most of us aren't. But I think, sprint car racing in Ohio, the Boss Series that Aaron's put together is just phenomenal. The fact that we can go to Indiana and have a choice of 3, 4, or 5 non-wing sprint car races on any given weekend is great. So, I do think over time you'll continue to see some of our guys go in that direction. At least I hope so. But in the meantime, I think we'll continue to show some really super talented drivers in the midget ranks. And, if folks move on, I'm sure we'll have new ones come along as we have had in the previous 5 years to fill those spots like they did when Gage, made his move.
I see a lot of our drivers actually staying with us and continuing to race. It's a lot of fun. It's fun, and it's fairly affordable to be able to do, and you can continue doing it. So I see us almost staying a little. I hate to say staying stagnant, but maybe staying a little stagnant with our drivers and having a good solid base. There's another series out in Washington State, and they have just a solid base. There's really not a move up, and they don't really view their series as a move up development series. It's a place where the price point fits with their drivers, and they just have a lot of fun. They enjoy it. And that is also one other thing to see about our series. It's a lot of people that are having a lot of fun with each other. They enjoy racing with each other. We all kind of park together, do things together. Something happens that's like a series is down there helping you fix your car, do whatever. You need a spare part, you can just go trailer to trailer until you actually get built. You can probably show up your own car there with everyone. It's just that kind of mentality there. It's not that I'm here to win and I'm not going to help you out at any cost. It's we're here to have a good time. What can I do to help you have a good time? That kind of mentality is what everyone really has, which is great.
That's awesome to hear. And, that talent sticks around, develops through, if it's quarter midgets into the midgets and then stays with the series. That's an excellent point. I'm glad, Chuck, that you said that it's a lot of fun and that's what they want to do. It's not necessarily a stepping stone for everybody,
Yeah.
but maybe some. So
Let me
Very
add
cool.
one thing to that, Clint. We talk about our sons being involved, and it's probably easy. Most people picture, oh, young kids, right? But my sons are 29, 26. They've got careers of their own. They're doing their own thing. But this is something that we enjoy doing together as a family. So there are a lot of family-owned cars where the sons are. I know in the case of mine, they're contributing to the racing program. It's not like I'm putting my kids in cars expecting them to, go on to the next level. It's just something that we enjoy doing together. So I'd have to say, the Gingriches fit that mold, the Briggs fit that mold. You go on and on and on throughout our entry list, and there's a lot of families there, which good for the promoters because they buy a whole bunch of pit passes, right? And
Right.
I think it's great for the families because you get that opportunity to spend that quality time at the shop and at the racetrack with your sons or daughters. So I really think it's just, I view it as a blessing that we have this opportunity. My sons could be doing a whole lot of things. The fact they choose to be at a racetrack, hanging out with us when they're in their 20s, is pretty cool. And, Chuck didn't mention, but I will say I'm pretty sure there's a few folks there that really just are there to hang out and have a few beers after the race. That's the highlight. I may be one of those people at this point. That's as fun as it gets. So
That happens.
just a great group.
That happens at racetracks.
No, not officially. No.
Interesting. Never heard of that before.
Awesome. We are we're getting up against time here, but I wanted to mention really quickly the first trip to Ohio, April 28th, is at Atomic, and that is a kids' night, and then Lima Land in May on the 14th, and then we'll make sure that we share your social media on our Twitter so you can find the schedule, and make sure that you catch a show this summer here in Ohio, or if you're in Indiana or Illinois, right? There's a couple of dates in Illinois. Is that right?
Well, we have a sister organization in Illinois, the IMRA, Illinois Midget Racing Association. Same rule package. So I think what you saw was the DuQuoin indoor race at the end of February. That's kind of their deal, but we support it. A lot of fun. Chuck and I took some cars out there last year. I appreciate you mentioning the social media. We utilize Facebook as our primary form of getting information out. We put a lot of effort into making sure that we're helping people get to know our drivers. Hopefully that encourages them to come and watch and support. A lot of information about our series there. I haven't released the 2021 schedule yet because we're still the full schedule. We're kind of dribbling that out a little bit because some of the tracks like Lima and Gas City haven't formally announced all of their dates. So we don't want to jump ahead of them and get the cart ahead of the horse. But we will be releasing the entire schedule here, I'm confident, within the next couple of weeks. And then, between now and race season, we'll be sharing a lot of good background information about the cars, the drivers, the series, and hopefully, something that keeps people interested in coming back to the website. So, thank you for having us here and giving us a chance to promote the series and help people across Ohio get to know it a little bit better, what we're all about, and really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Awesome. We appreciate your time. Jacob, do you have anything else before we sign off?
I'm good.
Awesome. Well, like I said, we look forward to seeing you guys in Ohio this summer. Best of luck with the rest of the planning, and we hope everything comes together for you guys efficiently. And have a great and safe season.
Fantastic. Thanks, Glenn.
All right.
Thanks, Jake.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, guys.